Well, Larry Goldberg, glad to see you here on a Monday after a decent day from Tesla. We always endeavor to try to figure out what's going on at least a little bit.
Mandy, but I thought the price had to be $338.
Yeah. Well, somehow some of the technologists that I don't follow but see from time to time are telling me that we're still in the wedge, Larry. We're still in the wedge. So there is still time for their wedge to play out, I suspect. But it was
Wedge,
interesting.
sledge, listen, all of that technical stuff I don't hold with at all,
I,
as you know.
I do
Uh,
know.
but I do think that the stock price in general really reflects a really, beautiful balance between um, institutional buyers who are skeptical and want to hold back any buying to see how things work out, and those that feel that they like to buy ahead of what is coming.
Right.
And so we see this beautiful balance. And I don't think this balance is going to shift a great deal one way or the other. I happen to disagree with all the prognostications that the technical guys come up with. I think we have the market, the market goes up when there are more buyers than sellers, goes down when there are more sellers than buyers. I think we have a balance. I think this balance has been in place for some time now. I think the price could go up a little bit and the price could go down a little bit. This is not investment advice. It's just how I feel.
Right.
And I think that only as the robotaxi plays out, only as the new models roll out, and only as Optimus becomes visible to us in terms of the new Optimus 3, the production of Optimus 3, these are factors that are going to really spur price growth in the stock. I'm very optimistic about those timelines. So I'm thinking that 2026 to 2027 is going to be a very big breakout year, significantly higher than most, even the bullish analysts point out. And that's, my view. So all the technical analysis, I think they're wasting their time. That's just magic, magic analysis or magical tricks.
Yeah, the fundamentals are definitely lining up. And I will
Yeah.
make an argument later tonight with Brian White that September is potentially got a lot of catalysts. Then we have,
You lose me there, you see.
well, the catalyst would be a very good sales number, which I think we're going to sell out in the United States. I think we're almost already sold out in the United States of Model Y, Model 3, and maybe even selling out S and X because of the incentives that are being provided. Then you've got, the robotaxi is going to be getting more and more and more advanced. You've got the Model Q will probably be announced in September, if not September, certainly October. So there's quite a few pretty strong catalysts coming up right away.
Right. Right. I I would just caution you against counting catalysts in the next month. I would say, stick to that 1 year prognostication because the stock movement over the next month is absolutely unimportant.
Of course, yes, yes.
Absolutely unimportant. Now, when we talk about a year, then it's very important. And so I just, the reason I really counsel people against these short-term prognostications is that they're bound to have disappointing moments where the stock, plunges down because Wall Street Journal decides to write an article about how, Elon Musk did something really unbelievable, indescribable, and he's the worst person in the world. So that's all I want to say.
Okay.
That's all I'll say about it.
All right. So then we have Sawyer Merritt telling us that Tesla now lets us rent a vehicle when we go in if we have a collision, we go in to get a collision repair. You can rent a Tesla while the vehicle's being repaired for as little as $45 a day. That seems like a good deal. Um,
That's a hell of a deal.
yes.
I think I'll go and have a collision.
And they give you free FSD supervised while you're doing it, free supercharging, and free tolls.
I will definitely go out and have a collision.
So anyway, this is, I think, just one more way that Tesla shows themselves to be in a completely different world than the other companies when it comes to customer satisfaction.
I think Elon is just constantly trying to find ways to sell cars without advertising. All he's trying to do is avoid advertising.
Right. Well, one of the best ways to avoid advertising, of course, is to have great word of mouth. And if people have great experiences at all levels of their relationship with the company, then that would certainly do it. So, by the way, these rental cars aren't available everywhere. So, but this, I guess, would be a test. One of the ways, Larry, I think that this happens, I talked about it on my show this morning, but I'd love to have you comment on it as somebody who's owned a number of businesses and large businesses. And you and I have actually talked about it before, but Tesla has just introduced yet another way for consumers to respond and react to anything that's going on with them in their Tesla experience. When you combine that with the people that have already been able to respond on X, which provides amazing response, then you've got people that are having something go wrong with their FSD can just hit the dial on the steering wheel and tell Tesla right then why they interrupted their FSD ride. This is the kind of stuff that for me would have been magical as a manufacturer to have that kind of consumer feedback like all day long, every day.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because somebody I know bought a non-Tesla vehicle. And they were complaining bitterly about a particular dealership and how they dealt with a particular problem that they brought back on day 2. No, that's a manufacturer fault. We have to be in touch with the manufacturer. And everybody's been through this problem.
Sure.
Everybody that within earshot of my voice has been through this problem. The dealer ducking it, handing it to the manufacturer ducking it, handing it to the dealer. You're caught in the middle, and it's a new car, and what to do. You get none of that with Tesla. None of it. I mean, my Cybertruck was recalled. Everybody in the world said, "Oh, Cybertruck's recalled, Cybertruck's recalled." I drive it in. They give me a replacement Cybertruck. I drive it out. I come back. They said, "It's all fixed." They called me that night. They said, "All fixed. Come get it." I come back in, and I had not scuffed, I'd actually torn some of the rubber molding around the base of the car and the corner to protect the corner just by the wheel. I went over a rock or something, and they replaced it.
Oh, wow. Just like
no questions asked. I said, "Oh, I didn't even show you that. I meant to." They said it's done.
Yeah, it's a completely different experience. There's no doubt about it. So this is just one more way that they're showing that. And I just thought it's important to let potential buyers that are listening right now, potential people who want to talk about it to their friends that are thinking about buying right now before the $7,500 goes away, and or just people that are interested in whether they should be in the stock or not.
Randy, I've just had a dozen, at least a dozen people from various countries in the world come in and spend time with us, and we drove them all. My daughter lives about an hour away in Greensboro town, an hour from us, and we had ferried through our three Teslas. We had either ferried people or we'd given them each a car, or that each family a Tesla to drive. Firstly, everybody learned to use FSD in less than 10 minutes flat.
Right.
Secondly, everybody said, "We didn't know. We had no idea. how does it have, blah, blah. The amazement, the quality of the ride, I wish I had bloody well recorded each one of them, because each one of them, it's like, oh my word, oh my, oh my, oh my, There you go.
There you go. All right. That's what we're here. That's what we know. I guess maybe someday Elon might advertise. My latest recommendation, of course, is that they don't need any advertising in September, but maybe it'd be a good idea to advertise during football season starting in October. That's just my idea. I could be. 𝐓𝐿. He goes under the name AMX Freeze, FREEZE. On X, he says Grock 4 consistently excels in the areas that truly matter: math, physics, science, earning near perfect scores and almost as high as 100% in some benchmarks. It offers true information with accuracy and depth, making it a powerful tool for anyone researching topics or tackling complex problems. Grock doesn't hallucinate. Well, that might not be true. And it is not a...
No, I think he's talking about math and science.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think there's a very big distinction. Yes. And I have to agree with him. I found Grock to be extraordinarily accurate in math, physics, and science.
And you've had a lot of opportunity to use it recently.
Yeah. I have.
Something about a book.
I was going to say plus writing the book, because
that's in addition.
Yeah.
He says it corrects errors, offers genuine, thoughtful feedback. It consistently excels at technical problem solving, logical reasoning, and in-depth scientific explanations. Grock is just intelligence with real power. So have you had a chance, Larry, have you also, as you've been working the last week or two, have you also been going into other of the models and comparing?
Yeah, I do fact checking on Gemini, and I do fact checking on GPT-5. I sometimes use Manus, although I'm now using it less and less because Grock is so agentic, so able. So I use a lot of the others, as I said, largely to fact check Grock, but I try. I've been writing this chapter of a book for somebody I know well and who I work with. And so I often will take a piece that I'm doing, a paragraph. I have a thought, and I tell Grock, this is my thought. Does it make sense? All right, let's try and do a paragraph about that. And then we do that. And then I'll take that thought and the paragraph and I'll put it to Gemini and say, Gemini, what are your thoughts about this? Gives me an answer. And so it's very interesting. But by and large, I am extremely happy with Grock. I think it is, all in all, the best of the bunch. Now, it's not as agentic as Manus, but the tools that Manus uses are really that easy to use anyway, that you're not really buying that much. You're buying some. I'm very interested to see what tools comes with the next release of Grock, because I think that's where a lot of stuff's going to happen.
Are you using heavy, or are you just using the regular?
I haven't found the need to go to heavy yet.
Okay.
It would be interesting to take the chapter of this book I've written, and since I've submitted to Gemini and to GPT-5, to submit it to heavy and see what heavy does by way of critiquing it. But I don't really do enough work that requires heavy.
Right. Okay, so that's what I have on Tesla today. But what I have 3 more subjects to go, all of which are really, really significant. So let's start with this. Moody's Mark Zandi, well-known guy.
Yep.
The first that I've heard in a long, long time used the R word today. Now he's tying the chance for a recession to the fact that we have net negative immigration, something I've been talking about for months and months. and not necessarily tying it to recession, but just saying, hey, you got to pay attention to the fact we've got net negative immigration and its impact on housing, on retail sales, etc. He argues that we might have job growth in the 20 to 50,000 range per month, which multiple people have now said, and which I said a week ago Friday. We talked about it, in fact, when we did the Kathy report. So 20 to 50,000 range instead of 150,000 because of the immigration issue primarily. And he says that would be the neutral number. Around 50,000, 40,000 would be the neutral number, keeping us at 4.2% unemployment. But he also argues, as I did over the weekend, that we can have some negative job prints. And he says that technically, when you have a negative job print, that's when people start that would be the first month, if you will, of a recession. So what do you think about the concept? I think it's nonsense that would be a recession, because you almost need an asterisk next to it saying, well, we're net negative migration. What do you think? What do you think about the idea that we might have 50,000 as our neutral? We might have net negatives we might have negative a couple of months. The impact of immigration. What does all this mean to you?
Well, job growth, the growth in the economy is not a function of jobs. It is a function of growth. Job growth does not necessarily mean economic growth, and job decline or relative decline is what you're talking about. From instead of growing at 120,000, it's growing at 50,000. Relative job decline does not indicate a decline in the growth rate, because there are multiple factors that go into the growth rate, and you can have one of the factors reduce and others increase. So Zandy's argument has some validity. I mean, reduction in the number of immigrants is a serious problem, because we are not attracting the immigrants we should be attracting, which would enhance the growth rate. But ultimately, everything depends upon how rapidly the economy responds to the 100% write-off of plant and equipment, building plant and equipment in 1 year. In my judgment, that should spur very, very rapid growth. It should certainly end up with the building trades and manufacturing spurring employment. So he may be right. Whenever we see the interest rate, the long-term interest rate dip below the short-term interest rate, when that reversion, what we call when that reverts back to long-term rates going above those of short-term rates, that's normally when recession starts. This has been a very unusual recession, that we've had this rolling recession continue during this very extended period, because recession normally lasts a very short period of time. So I think we're through the recession, but this is definitely, one negative factor. Now, although we haven't had a recession, I would love to run the numbers to see how many people have stepped out of government, either through choice or through action by the government, in the last 6 months, and how many of those will be joining the ranks of the available pool of employment, which would offset some of Zandy's remarks. So, these single point causes of recession very seldom are actually necessarily recessive. They are an indicator of the complex forces in the economy. So I don't know. I mean, he may be right. My instinct tells me he's not.
So the opposite side, which of course is the retail spending, We're going to hear a lot about that later this week because we've got Lowe's and Home Depot and a bunch of them all reporting this week. And he's saying that because, again, of net negative migration, you're going to have less aggregate spending, which I agree has to be true. But the question will be, I suppose, once again, do we have the folks that are still here spending more because their monthly income, their real monthly income is going up because they're the lowest end of the market is not competing with those very inexpensive migrants. So we've seen it already. We've seen real earnings going up. So you have real earnings going up. And if you get some optimism going again, then people might start to buy some of the durables. So we could see aggregate spending actually go up even in the face of net negative migration.
Could. On the other hand, we may not.
Right. Well, there's just all of these factors are playing in, Larry. That's what I've been trying to say this for all weekend. There are so many factors right now. The big, beautiful bill, the tariffs. There's so many different things that are all impacting at once. It's a little hard to know how it all plays out in the end.
And then there's an issue of confidence. I've just watched Trump greet, 6 leaders from Europe and UK and into the White House after, a really very upbeat session with Zelensky. We could see movement on the Ukraine front. Trump points out that he has presided over, ending 6 different wars since he took office 6 months ago. He's very focused on this one. He could well solve it. If he does, I think the market goes through the roof. I think people will start spending again. I think it will make a big difference, a very, very, very big difference. And by the way, it will lead to extremely high levels of spend on arms as Europe. I mean, that's going to happen anyway, but as Europe and the United States realizes, the deficit that they've incurred over the last 40 years.
Right. So the United States will need to replenish some of its stockpiles, and the Europeans have promised to take their spending from 2%, which some of them were not even at 2%, and take that up to 5%. So that's going to require a lot of spending.
But it goes much further, Randy. It's what you spend on. These gigantic arms deals of the past are going to go away. We're going to see massive growth of high-tech technology, arms. We're going to see drone technology. We're going to see huge changes in how we think about fighting wars. And so I think that is going to be a more important facet or factor than just the total gross expenditure or rearming. So there's no doubt we will need, a lot more shells and a lot more anti-aircraft, but we will need drones and we will need anti-drones.
So, Larry, I know that you've had very, very strong opinions about this part of the world, about the war itself, about the way it was managed and the way that it was resolving. And so in addition to the fact, which I think you're optimistic and hopeful that we are going to maybe see it come to an end here shortly, what do you think about the ending? What do you think about how it might play out here? I think we have most of the, what do you want to call it? The elements are on the table. I think they've been transparent maybe about what those are. Are you happy with where we are?
Look, I'm not ecstatic. In order to come to a deal now, we're going to have to give up a lot of Ukraine is going to have to give up a lot of territory and probably the Crimea. And this is going to be a very, very, very hard thing for Ukraine to do. It's going to be very, very, very hard for Europe to swallow. This is a pragmatic president. This is not a president an ideologue president. This is an ultimate pragmatic president. He wants ultimately peace in the world. That's what he wants. There are some principles he's not prepared to give up, but those are American principles about American people. That is his focus. He is American first. And he just sees Ukraine in a hiding to nothing if they continue this war. And so he's making a pragmatic decision. He's a pragmatic president, as I said, he's making a pragmatic decision, but it's going to cut to the quick in Ukraine. They've lost, some say 1 million people. They've lost a huge number of people who have exited the country and may never come back.
Right.
They've lost gigantic swaths of land, some of their most valuable industrial heartland. But they've gained, ultimately, true independence if they come to peace, if they come to a peace agreement that is supported by the whole of Europe in terms of and the United States, because Trump announced, he didn't announce, he agreed tonight in the conversation that the United States would join in this guarantee.
Right.
So it's a very bitter piece for it would be a very bitter piece for Ukraine. Certainly, I'm not ecstatic about it. It is a very bitter piece for Putin. I don't know, for him to make this agreement and survive is going to be pretty tricky, I think, for him. So the balance is very fine. Nobody's winning. Nobody is winning this war. Now, Putin may decide this is too much. I'm not going to survive this. I am prepared to go all out, and try and win this thing. That changes everything. If he's made that decision, or if he makes that decision, or he has made that decision, then I'm fascinated to see what Trump will do, because I think Trump will go all in. I think he'll give Ukraine everything that they need, and it will be a different outcome. I'm not saying good, bad, or it'll be a different outcome. Anyway, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm just, a rube in the middle of North Carolina. What does it matter?
In particular, I think there would be sanctions, apparently, that maybe the Europeans would finally step up on the sanctions. And that might, and I think that might be what's bringing Putin to the table anyway. I'm not sure that he feels that he might feel that he would lose either way, that the Russian public would not be very pleased with the kinds of sanctions that are being talked about now.
Yeah, and the question is, what does China do? What is China's interest? Is China's interest to let Europe and Russia bleed themselves dry? I don't know. China's in a very interesting state right now, and we can one day perhaps talk about China, because a very interesting moment for them. Interesting, not necessarily good, not necessarily bad, but fraught with all kinds of problems. I think, President Xi has played a long game, but I think he's running out of string. I could be wrong.
By the way, there's an amazing podcast with a young Chinese, educated in the United States, but Chinese woman on, I'm always forgetting his name, the other Ukrainian Russian in the podcast world. And for whatever reason, his name is MIT professor.
Lex Fridman.
Yeah, Lex Fridman. I just couldn't, just one of those senior moments, Larry.
Yeah.
Lex did this interview with this young woman, and she is an outstanding economic historian. Some of her analysis about how things might, or how she thinks they should develop or should be done going forward, I found to be strangely out of step with the brilliance of her economic history. but the economic history is worth it all by itself. So I highly recommend everybody to catch that that video that just came out a few days ago.
Was this Jennifer Burns?
Boy, I don't have it in front of me, Larry.
Okay.
Look it up. She's obviously Chinese and young, so those would be the
Chinese. Oh,
yeah, right. So Jennifer Burns doesn't sound right.
Yeah, Jennifer Burns is an economic historian.
Oh, okay.
Wrote a lot about Milton Friedman.
Okay. So then, Larry, I also want to bring up the other.
Oh, I know who it is. I've just looked it up as we're talking. 𝐤𝐦𝐚𝐲.
𝐂𝐦𝐚𝐲. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Very, very excellent interview. Okay, so then the other subject, Larry, it's kind of been lost in the headlines because it's all about the Ukraine right now. But Israel might be on the bloody edge of finalizing their war. What are you thinking about what's going on there right now?
So you should know I've had about 20 Israelis here.
That's right. You've got some.
Actually, I think I'm lying. I think it's closer to 12, but that just feels like 20. Israelis, they fill the space. We've had this conversation. I will say a lot of these Israelis that I spoke to are very opposed to Netanyahu. They're the kind of people that marched in the streets and so on and so forth. Kind of people who think Trump is, and suffice to say that I get into a lot of arguments with them, and some of those arguments get very, very loud. But somebody said
at the same time, you're hearing both sides.
Yes, I am. And so one of the sides say, "Oh, then this is a war that's never going to end. They're never going to win. It's a guerrilla war, can't be ended." I said, "I think it's coming to an end." Question: why do I think it's going? I said, "I think they're going to run out of. I think that the Palestinians are going to run out of ammunition. They're not getting any. I think that we're in the last round now. I will tell you, the Israelis are exhausted with the war. This has been a very long and very bloody war, and some kids have been fighting for 300 days." So it's very exhausting for the Israelis, let alone, what the Palestinians must be going through.
Sure.
Or Hamas must be going through. So it's not good for either side. It's not great for the Israelis, but it's really bad, I think, for the Hamas. And of course, the people who are suffering most are the Palestinian people, because it's incredibly difficult to get aid to them because of the politics of the aid. And, the Hamas are trying to use the politics of aid to, win hearts and minds. And they're doing quite a good job of it, by the way.
Yeah.
But I think that the war is going to come to a close. And I think, one by one, Israel has destroyed its enemies. Now, its biggest enemy, I'm sorry to say, is the public of the West.
Right.
And that is not a war that's being won. And that is not a war that's being well fought. And I wish, and Trump's done quite a lot to help fight that war, but I wish that they would do more. It's just, my hope. So I'm hoping this ends quite soon. And I'm hoping for a reasonable ending. And I'm hoping these hostages, the 50 remaining hostages or so, get freed.
All right. So thank you for that. That's exactly how I'm seeing it. So
Good.
that's I think it looks like they're at the point. I think Hamas is up against the wall. I don't see what their option is at this point, and they seem to have agreed either this morning or last night that they are up against the wall, because now they're asking for a ceasefire and additional hostages to be released.
They've been asking for a ceasefire all along, and they want to dribble out a few hostages for a ceasefire. It's not going to happen this time. Netanyahu wants all the hostages before he agrees to a ceasefire. And so we've been told the story before. We've had this chapter, we've read this chapter, we need to move on. So I think the war is going to continue until all the hostages have been released And, the other alternative is Hamas kill them all and say, well, they're dead,
Yeah,
now
right.
so terrible.
Yeah, I know. Okay, back to a more cheerful subject, and yet another one that is just popped today. It's the first person of any consequence that I've heard say it. And that would be a comment that we might be in an AI bubble. And this was proposed by none other than the head of ChatGPT himself. So we're sitting here with
That's a very intelligent thing to say when you're probably going to come to the market for a couple of billion over the next 12 months.
so I don't know if you saw that, but he's come out today or
I
yesterday.
think he'd love to kill the budding competitors.
Okay.
I think that's what I don't like the man. I think he is a world-class salesman. I think he's a world-class. You know what? I'm not his greatest fan,
No.
and I just had to, before I said something bad. And so I think we're at the beginning of a very important chapter. That it could be a bubble. I mean, we could see, AI stocks fall, but I don't think that's going to happen quite yet. I think we haven't read chapter 2 yet, and I think we need to read chapter 2 before we start thinking about it. But for sure, a lot of these companies are never going to make it.
Yeah. So, like any time, it doesn't matter what time we're talking about, there's going to be some losers. The question is, and right now, the thing that I pointed out when I talked about this this morning is that Sam Altman is trying to compare it to the 90s. And what we had in the 90s was a situation where if you put .com after your name, you could do an IPO and people would overpay for an IPO that had no revenue, had no had maybe didn't even have a product yet, an actual product, who had no profits and maybe no promise of profits for many, many years to come. We haven't seen that this time, partially because of the last administration was so negative on all IPO activity. But even in the first 6 months, while we've had several IPOs, these have been strong companies. So I'm not seeing where the bubble is going to come this time. The money is all private money in these new companies. It's private money, not public money.
That is true, but that doesn't alter the very high valuations being given to startups, which is kind of similar to, because so few companies are going to IPO, in a way it's kind of similar. So I think there are those parallels. The thing about it was that the technology didn't do anything. I mean, there was there were like 2 or 3 classes of product. There was a internet shop of a particular type of product. There was a marketplace of a particular type of product. And there was a sort of search engine, kind of thing. And each of those products were not really a true product. They're a component of what may be a good product and what could be a good product. So pets.com could not really compete with Amazon.com,
Right.
for example.
Right.
I think what we're seeing now is that there is going to be emerging some very strong AI technologies that will be the backbone of very significant build out of infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So I would liken this much more to the invention of the internet than I would to the dot-com bubble.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. I mean, there could be a combination of bubble and also huge development, but time will tell. And, Sam Altman is definitely trying to get rid of his competitors.
Okay. All right. Well, yes. All right. So that's all I have, Larry, except for the numbers. And at the time of our recording, it's 15 minutes to 3, which means we're 15 minutes away from the numbers being available. So
Right.
I'm going to put us on pause and hold off until 3 o'clock, and then I'll finish up with the numbers. But as always, I appreciate you coming on board. I'll let you get back to your family, and more family coming in, I understand, and
Yeah,
quite a house full for the next couple of weeks. That sounds like a ton of fun.
a lot of fun. Thank you, Randy.
All right. And to all of you out there, I'll be back shortly. Okay, let's take a quick look at the numbers. We've had a lot of more peace talks, and I guess Trump had a conversation with Putin to arrange a trilateral meeting between the three presidents at a time and place to be decided. My guess is soon, because that seems to be the emphasis right now, is rapidly bringing this to a close. As I had predicted, there doesn't seem to be a lot of attention to this by the investing public. We've got the Dow up 0.08, the S&P up 0.10, and the NASDAQ up 0.11. Now, maybe this is just early moments, and maybe the market is saying, hey, we've heard this story before. What we want to see is, the real thing. We want to see something that's being signed by the three presidents rather than just something being talked about. So anyway, as of now, that's what we're seeing in terms of the futures on the equities. We've got the bonds not moving very much either, down 0.4 basis point to 4.335, very close to where it was when I reported this morning. We have got oil down 43 cents in the pre-market at just about $63. You've got natural gas up a little bit, up 0.24, still sitting around 290, which is where it's been. Similar with gold, 33.79, basically unchanged in the pre-market. We've got silver, same thing, only up 0.16 at $38.09. Copper up 0.08 at 447, very close to the 450. Everything is pretty flat. Bitcoin is actually picked back up. It was at 115 this morning. While it's still down overall for the day, 668, that is a lot less down than it was. So we're now at 117,025. So there you have it. Those are the numbers. As I mentioned when we had Larry on just a few minutes ago, I've got Brian White coming on later tonight about 7:45, maybe a little earlier. Brian and I had a chance to really talk about some of the things Larry and I talked about, but we talked about them in terms of stimulus, we didn't really talk about the specific impact on the market, but we talked about all of the different aspects that are going to be potentially changing things in a major way here in the last few months of the year. And a lot of them are going to happen in the month of September. So that's why the thumbnail will say as much. Anyway, this is a very fun time as always with Brian. A lot of information, and yet, of course, delivered with Brian's sense of humor. If you didn't watch last night, I'm going to continue to suggest that you go back and check it out. My program last night at the end of the day talked about 4 things that, believe me, the market isn't paying attention to. Information arbitrage is what you have as a retail investor that the major companies don't have. Oh, but they've got all these huge, ways to be able to gather information and, cull information. They've got big staffs and everybody. The reality is they're also dealing with hundreds of companies, and they really do it in what I would consider to be a minimalistic way. They've got very specific things that they're looking for. You get to be far more flexible. And so I pointed out 4 things about Tesla. They're not exactly secrets, but believe me, they're not on the minds of the major investors out there. I'll put the card up again. Hopefully you'll go back and take a look if you haven't already. I think that it's one of the more important videos I've done recently. You may agree or disagree. Let me know in the comments after you've watched it. All right, that's all I got for you right now. As always, it's been great talking to you.